Leonardo DiCaprio has earned worldwide admiration not merely for his acting prowess, but for his genuine benevolence and unpretentious nature. Throughout his life, he has maintained a firm belief that one's true character manifests in how they treat individuals who can offer nothing in return. Beyond the constant glare of cameras and public attention, DiCaprio maintains a deliberately subdued existence. Though his social circle remains intentionally small, he consistently demonstrates attentiveness toward those who approach him with sincerity and authentic character. Among these individuals was Sophia, who had served as his housekeeper for numerous years. A woman of minimal verbal expression but unwavering religious conviction, she consistently wore a simple cross pendant, a physical manifestation of a profound personal narrative that few took the time to discover. During an exclusive charity function characterized by extravagance, celebrity presence, and meticulously manufactured smiles, an incident of profound injustice occurred. Sophia endured humiliation at the hands of a wealthy, arrogant attendee, solely because of the religious symbols she wore around her neck. What remained unknown to everyone present was that Leonardo had witnessed the entire exchange silently, his gaze fixed and his emotions intensifying with each passing moment. The question lingered: how long could he maintain his silence? What action would he take in response to such blatant cruelty? And to what extent would he go to demonstrate that genuine greatness isn't reflected in material wealth, but in fundamental human dignity? We invite you to experience this powerful narrative in its entirety. Before we begin, we're curious, from which location are you following this story? We genuinely value your comments and consistently make time to respond to them. At precisely 4:15 a.m., the alarm clock sounded, as it had done consistently for over 2 decades. In a modest brick residence situated within a working-class California neighborhood, Sophia opened her eyes and, before making any movement, instinctively reached toward her chest. The cross remained there, cool, metallic, and comfortingly familiar, like an embrace from an old friend. This cross transcended mere jewelry, it represented a living connection to her mother, Bella Morticia, who had raised her with principles of dignity, resilience, and unshakable faith. It wasn't simply metal, it embodied heritage. At 63 years of age, Sophia continued her work as a housekeeper, moving with the grace of someone whose actions carried purpose. Having lost her husband 8 years prior and raised 3 children who were now adults, her religious conviction had consistently served as her stabilizing force, with the cross functioning as her protective emblem. Despite persistent back pain that served as a reminder of decades of physical labor, Sophia carried herself with the poise of an individual who believed that dignity remained inviolable, regardless of how forcefully society attempted to convince her otherwise. This particular morning, however, carried a subtle undercurrent of anticipation. She was scheduled to work at the residence of one of Hollywood's most esteemed actors, Leonardo DiCaprio. Her employment in his household was something for which she regularly expressed gratitude during her prayers. For nearly 13 years, she had maintained his home twice weekly. From their very first interaction, he had demonstrated a rare form of kindness, maintaining eye contact during conversations, offering her coffee, and even remembering the names of her grandchildren. "Good morning, Bella Sophia," he would invariably greet her, accompanied by his humble, soulful smile. Today appeared to be relatively routine, with perhaps a slight deviation. As Sophia organized her cleaning supplies into her well-worn tote bag, Leonardo requested her presence on the veranda. "Bella Sophia, I realize you arrived early today, but we're hosting a charity function here tomorrow evening. It's significant, media presence, invited guests, the complete arrangement. Our annual fundraising event," he explained. Sophia nodded, already visualizing the elegance that would fill the residence. "And, one of the guests left a bracelet behind during the previous meeting. Did you happen to locate it?" he inquired. Sophia furrowed her brow thoughtfully. She then reached into her apron pocket and produced a small velvet pouch. "This one, correct?" she asked. "I discovered it beneath the armchair." "That's it. Perfect. Could you stop by tomorrow evening to deliver it? I won't be personally available, and I'd prefer it be handled by someone I trust." It's quite valuable, and you're consistently careful. Sophia hesitated momentarily. A social gathering? In the evening? Her? Among those distinguished guests? She swallowed anxiously. Are you certain, sir? Absolutely. Come as you are, Bella Sophia. This house is as much yours as it is mine. She smiled politely, attempting to conceal her discomfort. She had grown accustomed to individuals feigning kindness, but with Leonardo, there existed something authentic, almost pure in its nature. That evening, at her residence, she recounted the conversation to her youngest daughter, Raquel. Mom, that constitutes an invitation. It's not merely about delivering a bracelet, he wants your presence there. Oh, child, don't allow your imagination to run unchecked. I'll deliver it and depart immediately. That's all. I don't even possess appropriate attire for such an occasion. Raquel, employed at a local clothing retailer, smiled knowingly. Tomorrow, I'll assist you in selecting something suitable. And the cross? You'll wear it, correct? Sophia's hand instinctively moved to her chest. Always. This cross serves as my protection. It represents who I am. The following morning, Sophia visited the neighboring small salon for a hair appointment. She donned a clean, meticulously pressed navy blue outfit. Her mother's cross gleamed against the fabric, positioned precisely at the center of her chest. The taxi deposited her at the mansion entrance. Luxury vehicles lined the street. A red carpet extended from the entrance, accompanied by flashing cameras and sophisticated voices conversing in accented English. Sophia felt anxiety intensifying in her stomach. She inhaled deeply. Just deliver the bracelet and leave, she whispered to herself. She entered quietly, attempting to avoid drawing attention. However, before she could reach the main hall, the scrutiny began. Simple attire. Humble appearance. A cross prominently displayed on her chest, functioning like a beacon in an environment where symbols communicated more eloquently than words. She navigated a corridor adorned with expensive floral arrangements, maneuvering around waitstaff and sideways glances. Sophia, someone called from behind. It was one of the household security personnel. He smiled kindly. Mr. DiCaprio mentioned you would be arriving. You can leave the bracelet in the lounge to the left. Miss Julia is waiting. Sophia nodded appreciatively. She proceeded toward the lounge. It appeared more grandiose than she recalled. Chandelier crystals sparkled throughout the space. Elegant dresses shimmered under the golden illumination. And everywhere, judgment permeated the atmosphere like perfume. Then, she observed her. Standing at the room's center was a striking woman, tall, composed, with olive-toned skin and jet-black hair. A red dress contoured perfectly to her silhouette, embellished with jewels that reflected the light brilliantly. Her fragrance arrived before she did. Julia. Her gaze fell upon Sophia's cross and narrowed. A cold smile spread across her features. Oh. So it's you. Sophia, extending the pouch, presented it gently. You left this behind. I found it beneath the armchair. Julia accepted the pouch without expressing gratitude. She examined Sophia with knife-like scrutiny. And you came. Dressed like that. How interesting. Sophia, discomfited, adjusted the cross on her chest. I merely came to deliver this. I'll be departing now. Julia's smile remained fixed. Her voice assumed a sugary yet sharp quality. This is a charity gala, not some countryside church gathering. Sophia froze. Her face flushed. Her hands became clammy. Unconsciously, she clutched the cross, the same one her mother would touch whenever life became overwhelming. She turned slightly, prepared to exit. No confrontations. Not in this setting. But before she could take a step, Julia moved closer and articulated something that made the ground beneath Sophia's feet tremble. "You won't believe this, he invited me to the party. To personally deliver a bracelet I discovered," Sophia later recounted to her daughter, adjusting the cross around her neck. What she failed to anticipate was that on this particular evening, her most sacred symbol would become the catalyst for her deepest pain and the beginning of her most profound transformation. The evening had arrived. The DiCaprio Foundation charity gala illuminated the Hollywood Hills, resembling a constellation descended to Earth. Expensive vehicles arrived in succession, directed by valets in formal attire. Camera flashes painted the night with bursts of white light as celebrities posed with practiced smiles and well-rehearsed elegance. High heels resonated against marble surfaces. Laughter permeated the air. Some genuine, most rehearsed for effect. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected off gold-trimmed walls. Champagne flowed without cessation. The orchestra performed classical compositions with such flawlessness that it bordered on mechanical. Everything gleamed. Everything glittered. Everything projected an image of perfection. And then Sophia arrived. Her taxi stopped discreetly at a side entrance, deliberately avoiding the red carpet altogether. She didn't seek attention. She intended to fulfill her obligation and return home promptly. She exited the vehicle slowly, smoothing the wrinkles of her navy blue outfit, which she had meticulously ironed that very morning. On her chest, the cross rested visibly above her heart, reflecting faintly in the moonlight. As she approached the entrance, a valet observed her with confusion, uncertain whether to open the door or inquire if she was disoriented. She simply nodded, and he hesitantly moved aside. The moment she crossed the threshold, Sophia perceived it. Eyes. Not merely glances. Judgment. Numerous eyes assessed her outfit, her worn footwear, her simple handbag, and particularly the cross. In an environment dominated by diamonds and designer gowns, her presence created a disturbance. Some appeared curious, others amused, a few indifferent. But one reality was unmistakable. She didn't belong in this setting. Sophia maintained a downward gaze. She hadn't come seeking anyone's validation. She clutched the velvet pouch tightly, searching for a familiar face or any indication of Julia's whereabouts. The music intensified. Laughter traveled in waves. Servers carrying silver trays passed by her, never offering anything. Couples clinked glasses. Conversational groups formed that she knew she would never join. She noticed a cluster of women near the main staircase. Their dresses shimmered like liquid gemstones. Among them, unmistakably poised in her striking red dress, stood Julia. Sophia inhaled deeply, adjusted the cross on her chest, and walked in her direction. However, before she could reach her, someone else noticed her first. "Excuse me," a voice behind her inquired. Sophia turned to find a woman in a pale gold dress, displaying a tight smile and furrowed brow. "Are you one of the catering staff?" Sophia shook her head. "I came to deliver something to a guest." The woman arched an eyebrow, scrutinized her once more, then departed without further comment. Sophia continued toward Julia, who now had her back turned, laughing with several men in formal attire. But just as she stepped forward, Julia turned around and locked eyes with the cross. Silence. For a brief moment, it appeared as though Julia's smile faltered. Her gaze dropped to the cross, then returned to Sophia's face. "Well, well," she remarked, loudly enough for those around her to hear. "If it isn't the Holy Messenger herself." Sophia extended the pouch. "You left this at the previous meeting. Mr. DiCaprio requested that I return it personally." Julia accepted the pouch, examined it briefly, and then, rather than expressing gratitude, emitted a small, mocking laugh. "You know," she began, moving closer, "I almost failed to recognize you without your mop and gloves." Several individuals nearby chuckled softly, uncertain whether to laugh or look away. "I wasn't attempting to." Sophia began. But Julia interrupted her. I mean, it's quite brave of you to arrive dressed in that manner, with that cross conspicuously displayed. Is this a protest, or are you simply lost? Sophia remained immobilized. Her hands instinctively gripped the necklace. I came solely to return the bracelet, nothing more. Julia circled her predatorily. This is a charity gala, not a church revival, and that, she indicated the cross, is a symbol of superstition, of limited minds clinging to antiquated narratives. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Someone nearby laughed nervously. Others examined their drinks, avoiding the confrontation. No one intervened. And tell me, Julia continued, eyes gleaming, voice resembling honey infused with poison, that cross, what is it? A family heirloom? Or did you acquire it at a discount store en route here? Sophia looked downward. Her mother's cross rested against her chest, now warm from contact with her skin. Her eyes welled with tears, but she refused to allow even one to fall. Julia moved even closer and whispered, people like you wear such items because it's all you possess. But it doesn't belong in this environment. Then, with a smile as brilliant as her earrings, she turned away from Sophia and raised her glass. Cheers, everyone, she proclaimed, to generosity and knowing our respective places. The group laughed, softly, uncomfortably, but they laughed nonetheless. Sophia remained motionless. Her heartbeat resonated in her ears. Her body implored her to turn and flee, but something anchored her there. Something rooted in memory. In her mother's voice. In years of quiet strength. She took one step backward, then another, toward the exit. She couldn't endure this situation. And then she heard footsteps. Calm, heavy, measured. The crowd's laughter ceased abruptly as heads turned. At the summit of the grand staircase stood Leonardo DiCaprio, observing everything. He had witnessed the entire exchange. Julia approached with a venomous smile. This is a charity gala, not a countryside church service. Sophia clutched her cross instinctively. But Julia's subsequent statement would shake anyone's resolve, except hers. Because what Julia failed to realize was that Leonardo DiCaprio had observed everything from the staircase's summit. And he would not maintain his silence. For an instant, time suspended. The sound of violins dissipated. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The clinking of glasses ceased. From the top of the staircase, Leonardo DiCaprio stood in silence. His gaze fixed on Julia and Sophia. The soft illumination above cast a subtle halo around him, presenting an image both serene and commanding. His jaw was tense, his eyes unreadable. Julia, sensing attention directed at her, turned toward him with an affected smile. Leonardo, she remarked with feigned surprise, I didn't notice you up there. But he offered no immediate response. Sophia remained stationary, her heart pounding. She had been prepared to depart, to carry her humiliation quietly through the same side entrance she had used to arrive. But something about his presence, the stillness, kept her rooted in place. Leonardo began descending the stairs. Slow, deliberate steps that echoed across the marble floor like a heartbeat returning to a lifeless chamber. Every guest turned toward him. Whispers arose, then vanished. Julia straightened her posture, flipping her hair back as though nothing untoward had transpired. As Leonardo reached the bottom step, he surveyed the room. His voice penetrated the silence with precision. I observed everything. The room tensed noticeably. Julia produced a polite, nervous laugh. Observed what, exactly, she inquired, her voice artificially sweet. He disregarded her question. I witnessed every word. I saw how you regarded her. How you mocked her. And I noted the silence maintained by everyone else present. He turned toward the assembled guests. Dozens of individuals, immobilized in their formal attire. I saw people laughing, others pretending not to notice. And I observed someone who arrived here to return an item, only to depart with nothing but disgrace. Sophia swallowed with difficulty. Her fingers trembled around the cross. Leonardo moved to her side. Without hesitation, he gently took her hand and looked at her, not with pity, but with recognition. As though in that moment, she represented the only person in the room who truly mattered. He addressed the crowd once more. "You all wish to discuss charity tonight?" he questioned. "About generosity, compassion, giving?" Julia folded her arms defensively. "This situation is being exaggerated disproportionately." Leonardo directed his gaze toward her, cold and steady. "Is it?" Silence pervaded the room. Julia glanced at others, seeking support. No one moved. "That cross she wears," he continued, "isn't merely decorative, it embodies memory, life experience. A narrative that none of you invested time to discover, yet some found occasion to ridicule." He inhaled deeply. "I invited you here tonight to contribute to changing lives, to raise funds, certainly. But also to increase awareness. What I didn't anticipate was that the individual demonstrating the greatest dignity in this room would be the one some of you treated as though invisible." He turned towards Sophia once more. Then, in a gesture simultaneously intimate and public, he knelt before her, eliciting a collective gasp from the room. Sophia attempted to dissuade him. "Mr. DiCaprio, please." But he raised his hand gently. "If greatness exists here tonight, it resides in her." A fleeting emotion crossed Sophia's countenance, shock, confusion, even embarrassment, but predominantly pride. Julia's jaw tensed visibly. "This is absurd. She's merely a cleaning woman." Leonardo rose slowly. "And what are you, Julia?" The room fell silent again. If anyone here tonight exemplifies greatness, it's her. But Leonardo's subsequent actions would completely transform both the event's purpose and Sophia's life permanently. A profound hush had descended upon the gala. No music, no laughter. Only the sound of hearts pounding behind polished ribs and sequined gowns. Leonardo stood tall beside Sophia, his expression calm yet resolute. His eyes scanned the room, pausing on each guest, on every face that had laughed, looked away, or remained silent moments earlier. He wasn't performing. He was bearing witness. "This event," he began, his voice steady yet filled with conviction, "was never intended to revolve around appearances, social media photographs, or social standing." He paused to breathe. "It was meant to concern people, the authentic stories behind the smiles, the genuine pain underlying the need, the real hands that construct the lives upon which we all stand." He gestured toward Sophia. "She isn't merely someone employed here. She's someone who taught me what strength resembles when no observers are present. She has carried more burden and silence than some of us could endure with professional support systems and immediate therapeutic access." A murmur rippled through the crowd, perhaps embarrassment, perhaps reflection. Julia maintained her rigid posture, arms still crossed, but her face had lost its sharp definition. She no longer controlled the situation. Leonardo continued, his voice gaining depth and resonance. "Sophia wakes before sunrise. She works to ensure her grandchildren can attend school. She prays each morning. She cherishes the final gift her mother bestowed upon her, that cross. Not for display, but for strength." He now looked directly at Julia. "And tonight, someone attempted to take that from her. Not through force, but through shame. And shame represents the most dangerous form of theft." Sophia remained motionless, eyes slightly lowered, still clutching the cross. She felt hundreds of eyes upon her, but strangely, not as judgment anymore, something else, something unfamiliar. Respect. Leonardo approached the stage at the room's front, turning toward the microphone established for the evening's addresses. A few hesitant applauses echoed from the room's rear. Uncertain. Wavering. Then more joined in. Then suddenly, applause erupted like a wave, cautious initially, then building in intensity. People began rising to their feet. Some were crying, genuine tears now, not from guilt or pity, but because something authentic had penetrated the superficial veneer of the evening. Leonardo raised his hand to quiet the room. When the applause subsided, he spoke again. I had intended to address you tonight regarding statistics, about our foundation's accomplishments, about our fundraising objectives. But that speech has become irrelevant. He paused, eyes fixed on Sophia. You all arrived tonight with wallets containing credit cards, but how many entered with hearts full of compassion? Silence enveloped the room. He invited Sophia to the stage with a gesture. She declined nervously with a shake of her head. He descended from the platform, returned to her, and extended his hand, palm open, without pressure. Gradually, cautiously, Sophia placed her hand in his. He guided her to the stage. As she stood beneath the lights, the room felt transformed, as though she occupied her destined position, and everyone else was only now comprehending this reality. Leonardo spoke again, now with a lighter tone infused with admiration. This is Bella Sophia. And before anyone speaks further, I believe it's appropriate that you hear her story. He stepped aside. Sophia surveyed the room. Never in her life had she stood on a stage, addressed such a gathering, or experienced so many eyes awaiting her words. She brought her hand to her chest, touched the cross, and began speaking. My name is Sophia. I originated from a small Brazilian town. I immigrated to this country for employment. I've worked as a housekeeper since age 18. I raised my children independently after losing my husband. I maintain faith in God, in kindness, and in the belief that dignity carries no monetary value. The crowd remained silent, but the quality of silence had transformed. It now represented attentiveness. I wear this cross because my mother presented it to me before her death. She advised me, whenever you feel invisible, remember, God perceives you. And tonight, I received a reminder that sometimes others perceive you as well. She looked at Leonardo and smiled gently. Thank you. The crowd began applauding again, with greater conviction and authenticity. It wasn't solely for Leonardo. It acknowledged her presence. At the room's rear, Julia moved toward the exit. Her expression remained inscrutable, but then she halted and turned around. She no longer commanded the room's attention, and the silence surrounding her no longer signified admiration. It represented accountability. Then, from among the audience, a young woman in a silver dress slowly rose from her seat. Her voice penetrated the moment. I know her, she stated. The entire assembly turned toward her. The young woman stepped forward, her eyes directed at Julia. I know Julia, and you should hear her story as well. A young woman among the crowd stood up. I know her story, and everyone present needs to hear what she's been concealing. The entire room turned toward this new voice, and no one was prepared for what followed. The room still resonated with Leonardo's words. The atmosphere felt charged, not with celebrity or glamour, but with something more profound. Then, from the back of the room, a young woman rose to her feet. I know Julia, she declared, her voice clear and unwavering, and you all should hear what she's been concealing. A ripple of reaction moved through the crowd as she stepped forward. Her name is Barbara. We grew up on the same street. Her mother worked as a seamstress. They possessed little materially, but they had faith. They wore crosses identical to the one Donna Sophia wears. Every Sunday, side by side in church. Julia remained frozen. When Julia received a scholarship and departed, she began erasing everything, the accent, the surname, the neighborhood, and eventually, the cross. Barbara turned toward Sophia. She saw you tonight, and it terrified her, because you reminded her of the aspects of herself she buried to survive. She wasn't attacking you. She was fighting her own reflection. Julia's voice cracked as she finally spoke. I didn't hate you. I hated what I formerly represented. I desperately sought acceptance. I erased my identity. Tears streamed down her face. I've existed for an extended period without spiritual connection. Sophia approached her, composed and steadfast. You attempted to eliminate what constituted your strength, she observed gently. But that aspect of you was never weakness. Merely concealed. Julia looked downward, ashamed. I don't merit your forgiveness, but if your faith still accommodates someone like me, perhaps transformation is possible. The room collectively held its breath. Sophia studied her countenance, then reached out and took Julia's trembling hands. Faith doesn't reject. It welcomes. It doesn't punish. It restores. Julia collapsed into her embrace. A quiet sob rippled through the room, not exclusively from her, but from others recalling their former selves. Then Leonardo stepped forward carrying a velvet box. I commissioned this to honor you, Bella Sophia, he explained. He opened it, revealing a white gold necklace featuring a small emerald cross and elegant radiance. Gasps arose from the crowd. Leonardo offered it to her. But Sophia simply placed her hand on her chest, covering the old, worn cross. This one has accompanied me throughout my existence, she remarked softly. It might not gleam like that, but it embodies everything I am. Leonardo smiled. It shines more brilliantly than any gold I could provide. The audience rose to their feet, no cheers, just silent, respectful acknowledgement of dignity that couldn't be purchased. Leonardo then presented the new necklace to Julia. This isn't a reward, he informed her. It's a seed. Transfer it when you encounter someone who evokes memories of your former self and who you can still become. Julia clutched it, emotional and wordless. Sophia, fingers resting on her mother's cross, whispered, It's not the brilliance that matters. It's the truth it represents. A young woman in the audience stood. I know her story. And you all need to hear what she's been concealing. The entire room turned, unprepared for what followed. The gala had fallen silent. Julia stood before Sophia, visibly affected, while the guests observed, uncertain whether they witnessed a conclusion or a commencement. From the room's periphery, the young woman who had spoken earlier advanced again. Her name was Barbara. She carried herself like someone who had awaited this moment for years. I know her, she stated, eyes focused on Julia. Not tonight's woman in red. The girl she once was. Gasps stirred among the crowd. Her mother worked as a seamstress. They possessed little materially, but maintained faith. She wore a cross identical to Bella Sophia's. Attended church every Sunday, assisted my brother with academic work. She dreamed of elevating her family from poverty. Barbara paused briefly. But upon achieving success, she didn't merely depart. She erased her accent, her name. And the cross. Julia looked upward. Her voice cracked, yet remained honest. I felt shame regarding my origins, she admitted. So I buried that history. And tonight, when I saw you, she turned toward Sophia, you reminded me of everything I attempted to forget. And I resented you for that reminder. Sophia remained composed. You didn't resent me, she observed gently. You resented the aspect of yourself you perceived as valueless. Julia wiped her face. I developed cruelty. Not from desire, but because I believed it represented the only survival method. I've existed extended periods without spiritual connection. Sophia moved closer. You can display it around your neck, she remarked, touching her own. But it only illuminates when it resides within. Leonardo stepped forward, voice calm and measured. This explains our presence, he stated. To remember our origins and determine who we aspire to become. Julia turned back to Sophia, trembling visibly. I don't deserve forgiveness, but if your faith still accommodates someone like me, perhaps transformation is possible. The entire room collectively held its breath. Sophia, the woman who had endured humiliation hours earlier, simply extended her arms. She embraced Julia, not to rescue her, but to welcome her back to authenticity. The room remained still. Some wept, others bowed their heads, not from guilt, but reverence. Leonardo approached carrying a small box containing a golden necklace with a delicate emerald cross. I commissioned this for you, he told Sophia. But I believe it belongs with her now. He presented it to Julia, not as reward, but as reminder. Pass it forward when appropriate. Sophia smiled, still touching her worn cross. I'll retain mine. It doesn't gleam like that, but it carries love. The audience stood, not in applause, but in presence. Silent. Transformed. Leonardo addressed them. She entered unnoticed. She departs reminding us who we were, before the world taught us to forget. As guests formed a line to thank Sophia, not as celebrity, but as mirror, she nodded humbly. I simply remained authentic, she whispered. The rest followed naturally. At the exit, Leonardo accompanied her to the waiting taxi. You've transformed this environment, he observed. She smiled. No. I merely amplified silence until it became audible. And as the vehicle merged into the California night, the room remained full, of hearts opened by the quiet power of grace. How many crosses have you overlooked? Assuming they didn't belong. And how many Sophias have walked beside you, while you maintained your silence? Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.